Hello, my name is Khadijah Ali-Coleman, and I'm going to talk with you about the many faces of homeschooling. All right, when we talk about the different faces of homeschooling, many times we don't realize that homeschooling does not just differ in what we call it. What you'll learn over the course of this teaching is that some people refer to their home education practice as deschooling, unschooling, things like that. But there are also other things that may make your homeschooling practice look differently from other Black families who homeschool. I wanted to just make it clear, as you see my face repeatedly during this teaching, talking to other parents, other researchers, other home educators about homeschooling, home education. I wanted to make it clear that not only am I a researcher and have studied the practice of homeschooling and its impact on college preparedness, but I'm also a homeschooling mother. Um, so it says that I'm a mom of a 15-year-old. She's actually 16. This is a slide from another presentation that I did that I poorly edited, that I did over a year ago, because she's actually going to be 17 in September. But I teach college, but I'm also a performing and literary artist. I was a doctoral student until May 14th of this year, where I graduated and became Dr. Ali-Coleman. I'm a teaching artist, and I'm also a community organizer. I actually homeschool with my daughter's father. We're not married, but we've been living together and co-parenting since our daughter was 4 years old. Prior to that, I was living and teaching in Baltimore while he was here in Fort Washington, Maryland, and then we moved back to Fort Washington, Maryland when she was 4 years old. I'm a DMV native, meaning that area of Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia called the DMV. I actually was born in D.C. So that's a little bit about who I am, and that's my daughter and me in that picture. I work with youth and families. I run an online portal that it's a blog, but I also have an active Facebook page as well. But you can learn more about that at sawyeronline.wordpress.com. I offer courses through studentmediaonline.com. I'm going to be offering an upcoming session for homeschooling parents, particularly those who are beginning their journey. It's a boot camp of sorts, and you can learn more about that at studentmediaonline.com. So today I wanted to talk about the reasons why families choose to homeschool, the different ways that Black families homeschool. So giving a look at some of the things that they engage in during their practice of homeschooling. I want to share a little bit about what law is here in Maryland, to let those of you who are beginning your process know how important it is for you to be knowledgeable of the law of your state. Because there's certain things, certain differences that exist among the different states. Although every state allows homeschooling, there's certain boundaries in terms of things that you're allowed to do, or things that you need in terms of documentation to demonstrate the type of that you are educating your child. And they're not just truant, but you're actually engaging and learning with them. And my journey as a homeschooling mom will provide some context for some of these things that I'll be talking to you about. So I wanted to start with this idea of a learning philosophy. Many of us who are engaging in homeschooling are doing so with the belief that there's a particular learning philosophy that guides what it is that we do. I also talk about this as perhaps being a mission statement that your family may have, that you may have as an educator, that you may have co-created with your children. But it really talks about the purpose of this journey. What is the purpose of this journey? Homeschooling is not a new practice for you. You consider yourself to be seasoned, or you've been doing this for a while. It's still not too late to really reflect and process what your learning philosophy is, and discuss this with your child, particularly of those of you who have children who are a bit older and can engage in discussion with ease. Because once they are more aware of this learning philosophy or what it is that they're engaging in, or they can characterize it for themselves, it becomes easier for them to discuss it, but it also helps them understand the value of this experience that they're engaging in. Just to share, my learning philosophy as of late is that education is intended to build critical thinking skills that can be applied to real life situations. Education should have an element of character building and commitment to community building and social justice. Ideally, learning will take place in an emotionally and mentally nurturing environment with compassionate instructors who are forever learners, committed to ongoing learning experiences for themselves and others. Instructors are also well educated in the role of well educated in how systemic injustice operates internationally, and they teach from this understanding. So my homeschool life, moving on from a learning philosophy to what some of the highlights have been, as a homeschooling mother who has been homeschooling off and on for 12 years, has definitely been the way that learning and schooling has really been integrated in the fabric of our lives. So really there hasn't been any visible duality to how we're living, because how we live, we look at as a learning, engaging in learning as well. After a while, I really saw a difference when we were engaging in activities, experiential learning, activities, being out in nature, participating in programs. And some of these pictures are from you can see here, blood type. One day we don't know what our blood type, I had forgotten what mine was, which is crazy, but decided why not find out what our blood types are and and that become a lesson for more investigation into things connected to, affiliated with blood type and just biology in general. And so I just wanted to share that homeschooling looks different, and it's very unique to who your family is. So in my research, so I say that the homeschooling looks different and is very unique to who you are, who your child is, who your family is, what your needs are, all of those things, okay? But as a researcher, I also know that to be true. So as a practitioner, as a homeschooler, I know that to be true. As a researcher, I know that to be true as well. The research will tell you that the reasons why Black families homeschool are vast. Some of those reasons include environmental issues. One researcher by the name of Rohn said that environmental issues in the schools, from drugs to discipline issues of other children, and low expectations from teachers and administrators is one of the #1 reasons why many families Black families are choosing to homeschool. Another reason, racial intolerance, the work not challenging in the classroom. Researcher by the name of Marek interviewed families and found that Black parents chose to homeschool when the school in which they originally had their children enrolled had issues regarding race, or the work was not challenging their children. Marek also found that parental experiences and religious background also impacted the choice to homeschool. So parents make decisions to homeschool and forego enrolling them in school sometimes based on their own experiences in institutionalized schooling or their want to emphasize religious training in their instruction. I can tell you that my daughter was actually, I chose to homeschool her. I always looked at homeschool as being ideal. I'll be honest. My mother homeschooled. I'm the oldest of 5 children. All of us are girls except for one. Our boy is the middle. He's the 3rd child, smack dab in the middle. My mother actually decided to homeschool him when she did not feel that the middle school in our community was a viable option for him to attend. And so she homeschooled him. I'm much older than my siblings, so 8th grade is probably what, 11, 12. And so I'm 11 years older than him. So I had graduated from college. I was in my early 20s. I had graduated from college and I was actually working. I was a case manager at the time. And so I witnessed my mother homeschooling him, and I actually helped in some ways, like my job as a case manager. I tracked students who were truant in middle school and elementary school as well, and engaged with them throughout the week, from homeschool, after school activities to also doing things with these children on the weekend. And I would bring my brother with me a lot of times. If we did recreation and things like that. And so I worked with my mother in that sense as my brother was being homeschooled. But that was my early introduction to how homeschool could look. And homeschool was a possibility. And if you aren't really happy and thrilled about the school, then you can pull them out and homeschool. And that was a message to me in my early 20s, seeing this with my brother. So my daughter in 4th grade, she was identified as talented and gifted in this state or county that's called TAG. And so I put her in public school. I had pulled her out of our neighborhood school, but put her in a school I would have to carry her to that was TAG identified. And I tagged, when I was in Gifted and Talented as a child, that was a pull-out program. It was so engaging. It was everything that school should be for every single child in terms of just interesting, engaging, and I got engaged with things that are still of interest to me now as an over 40, a middle-aged woman. I'm still interested in many of the things that I was introduced to as a talented and gifted student. And so I wanted my daughter to have that experience as well. So I put her in the school thinking that because this was TAG identified, that would be her experience. And what they interpreted TAG to mean was just more work, that these children are prepared for more work. So this little child of mine would come home, would be in class all day, would fall asleep on the way home, me bringing her home because she was so exhausted. And then we open her book bag and she has 5 hours of homework to complete. So meaning basically she's in school all day and then she's to come home and begin homework and do that all day until there's just no end. And then her teacher contacted me to one day, and I'm alarmed, thinking that she's being disruptive. The teacher tells me that she finishes her work early. And when she finishes her work early, she begins to write stories. The other students see her pull out her journal, start to write, and it creates a disruption for them to finish their work. And she wanted to ask me if I could talk to my daughter about maybe just sitting there quietly. It was the most ignorant thing that I had ever heard in my life. And that would, at that moment, was when I was deciding I'm going to homeschool her from here on out, because this was just criminal in my mind. It was just so atrociously stupid. And so when we talk about parental experiences, these are my experiences that definitely influenced my decision to homeschool. So these top 5: environmental issues, racial intolerance, the work not challenging, parental experiences, religious training, definitely are not the end all. In fact, there is at least one speaker in our teaching who you will hear them say, there was no reason, other than it was not a problem somewhere else. I just wanted to homeschool. This was just something that I wanted to do. And so this is not an end all. There are other reasons why. Some folks believe that the school just may not be able to accommodate their child, whether the child has special needs, whether the child is not, whatever the reason may be. But these are some of the main reasons why Black families are choosing to homeschool nowadays. So when the homeschooling families do make the decision to homeschool, a lot of times one of the first things that comes up, particularly for the new homeschooling family, is how will this child then begin to learn? And so you have many options. Some opt for an online curriculum. Online curriculums could be a program where it's a bunch of sessions and the child can basically self-directed begin to move from session or module, sometimes they call a module, to move from module to module once they have achieved whatever the benchmarks are in one module before moving on to the next. You have some online programs such as Khan Academy. I don't know if folks look at that as being a curriculum, but I know that you can set it up where it's a curriculum. One of the things, and Khan Academy is free, one of the things that Khan Academy's math program, I know in particular, because I use that early on in my homeschooling practice, is that you can get the child started on one area of math, let's say fractions, and the child has to answer questions, usually set up in a multiple choice format. And what the computer is able to ascertain by the answers that the child gives, particularly when the child is given incorrect answers, that if they choose a certain answer, it may be because, in order to do fractions, you need to know how to divide, right? And so they keep picking answers that kind of give the indication that this child is having challenges with division. So then the questions will turn into division questions. So that a logarithm that they use is not so much where it's module to module. It's really supposed to be intuitive, that if you're working on fractions and the child isn't getting certain things, intuitively can say or can tell that they need to beef up this area before they can continue to accelerate in fractions. And so an online curriculum, usually done online. Some are done like Khan Academy, where it's a computer program, pretty much. They have parts of it where you can set up an account and view the progress of your child, set it up in terms of it, where you're assigning your child to do certain things. So you have a hand in building this online curriculum piece, and Khan Academy then essentially is providing the content that the child is working on. Most and many online curriculum programs are already curated by someone who's put together something packaged for your child to then engage in. They may offer certification or something to indicate that the child has finished. They may even have it so that you sign up with them, and then they give grades or some type of documentation that you can then file or use as part of your portfolio if your state requires you to demonstrate the work that the child has engaged in. So online curriculum is one option that families engage in. So when you are listening to the speakers during the teaching talk about an online curriculum, this is kind of an idea of what they are talking about. Some parents opt to use a boxed curriculum. So I think the difference is obvious from an online curriculum. A boxed curriculum is not online. It's something that you can purchase. It's usually textbooks and workbooks. It may be a teacher's version, so that if your children are utilizing the student workbook and the student textbook, you have the teacher guide, which allows you to grade the answers, to determine what you want to assign first to the child, what order. I have Saxon Math on here as an example. Saxon Math, I use Saxon Math with my daughter for 5th and 6th or 5th grade. She was not feeling Saxon Math after a while. She could do it, but it was just boring. It was nothing really engaging. We went over things together. They have worksheets and things that you can time. I think it served its purpose for a while, but I think it was, for my child, mixing it up, Khan Academy and games and other ways were things that appealed to her. But Saxon Math is actually a very popular box curriculum. There are other curriculum sets out there that you can purchase as well. Some families may not use an online curriculum, may not use a box set, or may use both and may use a cooperative. A cooperative is a homeschool cooperative is usually formed by a parent or a group of parents who have come together and decided that they want their children to learn with other children. And they want to learn certain subjects. And so the parents themselves may take turns teaching different subjects, or they may hire contractors to come in and teach these subjects. And the co-op determines what those subjects are going to be. So usually the parents who have created the co-op discuss what are some of the things our children have showed an interest in, or what are some things that we want our children to learn. Whatever the process is, they make the decision that these are going to be the subjects. They either just decide they're going to teach them, or they're going to hire folks to come in and to teach these subjects. I've taught for a couple of co-ops. I've taught communication studies. That's what I teach in college as well. And my daughter has been in a couple of co-ops, and she's taken everything from chemistry to sociology, African history, poetry, arts, including learning how to do Egyptian art on papyrus, just incredible classes that she's taken through co-ops. So co-ops are definitely an option. Many families, as I said, may have, and co-ops usually offer courses once a week. So there are other days of the week that you may choose to have your children engaged in other things throughout the week, where it may be a box curriculum or an online curriculum. But I'm just giving some examples of what are some of the things that homeschooling parents engage their children in. Then some parents choose to curate their own curriculum, whether it's curate the curriculum and that's it, or in tandem with attending a co-op, or using a box curriculum, or using an online curriculum. When I even use the word curate, you hear that word a lot when you think of museums. The curator of a museum is the person who is choosing what goes in this exhibit. What are the things that I want to be in this exhibit? And so you're a learning curator for your child. So you're making the final decision. What are some of the things that I want them to learn? Some parents, particularly parents who choose to unschool or practice self-directed learning, the child is either the lead curator or the co-curator of the curriculum. I know that once my child asked me, could I homeschool her for high school, she definitely became a co-curator of the curriculum. And so pretty much everything that she does when my daughter is dual enrolled in community college right now. So she takes college courses, but everything that she does in the house, or when we go out, or what she said has told me that she wants to do that is not related to her college courses is definitely curated by her. I'm usually the person paying for it or teaching something, or her father is something she's interested in. So an example is she is getting an associate's in English. I told you she's 16. She's getting associates in English. So a lot of her courses now are like in literature, things like that. But she was like, she's really interested in music. Her father is a multi-instrumentalist. I'm a performance artist, but my performance usually revolves around, I'm a playwright, and I'm also an actor and a spoken word artist. So as a vocalist, I didn't feel that I had even though I am a vocalist as well, I felt that this would be an awesome time for her to work with someone, a professional artist, to teach her that. She just actually had a recital, which was awesome. But that's something that she wanted to be part of her learning experience this past year. In addition, she's really into plants. She worked at a plant place. I sound so ignorant, a nursery. And she also maintains many plants, has her own collection of plants and things like that. And she's into beading. It's just a lot of things that she has really taken ownership of and curates now as an older child. And so this is an option. Many parents start even younger than my daughter did. And I actually believe that my daughter was doing this as a younger person when she was in middle school, in elementary school, right before she went to middle school. But I think it was actually more intentional and more obvious when she became older. And then some families decide no curriculum. Again, unschooling is no curriculum necessarily, but this practice where the child has interest is really this idea that children will gravitate what they have an affinity for, and our role as parents is to really just support their engagement with where their interest directs them. And we have a couple of speakers who are going to talk about actually implementing unschooling, deschooling, self-directed learning as a practice, which many parents may become frantic with just the thought of it, because all of us, I think, come from a traditional schooling mindset where just the thought of moving forward without a formal plan in place is frightening for many, causes high anxiety. And so I really urge those of you where that may be you become terror-stricken with hearing about that, but you are interested and you maybe want to be slowly introduced to that. I really encourage you to check out the talks from some of our speakers, particularly Malika Diggs and Zadeka Terrell. Also, Olu would talk about how to really move into that through their homeschooling journeys that they share. They talk about what kind of led them to that as being a process that they now engage in with their children who are being home educated. And then some families are choosing dual enrollment. And I mentioned that. So my daughter right now is a homeschooling child who is dual enrolled in community college. So since she started high school at 14. The second semester, what would be considered the second semester of her ninth grade year, we enrolled her in community college. And this is really when she first started high school, and I had her in a co-op, and I had her doing some things. She said, "I do not want to do co-ops ever again. Please stop this." And I said, "Well, what's next?" Because has certain expectations. Like, she loves homeschooling, but she at least once a week to be engaged in learning with other children. She has all like this specific things that she wants, which is awesome. I love that she knows what she wants. But when she said no to co-ops and she still wants to have learning experiences with other people, the only thing that I could come up with was, well, do you want to do college? And so it's like, yeah, let's give that a try. And because in our county, you could be 14 and start community college only if you are designated as a talented and gifted student. And because she had been in public school already and had this designation, she was able to be enrolled in college because that was on her record. In our county, every homeschool student gets a school ID number, even if they're not in public school. And if you have been in public school and you decide to homeschool, then you just keep the number. The child keeps the number that they had it's tracking number that they had while they were in public school. And so she didn't have to take a test or anything because on her record, she was listed as talented and gifted. If a child in our county who was never tested, never attended public school, but the parent wanted them to attend college earlier, they would have to have taken a test in order to be admitted earlier. And so she has been taking college classes since she was 14. And the intention is for her to be done she's about to begin her senior year, what would be her senior year in high school. And it should be her last year as a community college student. So she'll be getting her associate's degree when I graduate her from our homeschool situation. She wants to go to a 4-year institution. And so dual enrollment, that's what dual enrollment is when a child is still in P through 12 while taking college courses. Many students, and so my research actually revolves around homeschool dual enrolled students. I'm really one of the first to look to do that for Black students in particular, or looking at Black students, homeschool students in particular who are dual enrolled. And so I'm going to talk about my findings and just the practice in general as a homeschooling parent of an African-American dual enrolled student who is homeschooled. I'm going to be talking about that in another talk, and you can check the schedule of talks to see when that is. But this is an option for many parents who have high school students they're homeschooling, where they may want their child to have college credit, want them to experience or experiment to see what college is like. They may choose dual enrollment for them. So I'm going to move on to share this. So I'm in the state of Maryland. I wanted to share that. So Maryland has a compulsory attendance law that states that each child who resides in Maryland is 5 years old or older and under 16 shall attend a public school regularly during the entire year, unless the child is otherwise receiving regular thorough schooling during the school year, and the studies usually taught in the public school to children of the same age. And so I put this here as an example of what, for those of you who are watching and you are here in this teaching because you are looking for tips on how to get started, the number one thing that you need to begin doing is finding out what are the policies in your state, okay? What are the policies that your state mandates a homeschooling parent needs to have in place in order to begin? The reason is that it's not the same across the board. So me sharing this with you, if you're not in Maryland, this means nothing to you. I'm sharing this with you because you need to know what the laws and the policies are in your state. And this is an example of something that you began to look for. One of our speakers, Lanissa James, she's a representative from the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, which is probably the most prominent organization in our country regarding homeschooling. They are Christian-based. However, the work that they do really informs the homeschooling practice of those of us who may not be choosing to have a Christian-based homeschool practice. And what that means is that as a legal defense association, a lot of the information that they post on their website and that they share with their members, their membership organization, revolves around policies that impact homeschool students. We as researchers are paying attention to policies, and this organization, Black Homeschool Educators and Scholars Organization, we are going to begin to compile information that's specific to Black families who homeschool. But I always jack up the letters, HSLDA, they have for over 30 years really been an oversight group, a watchdog group, if you will, of what policies each state has so that they can advocate on behalf of homeschoolers if the laws start to infringe on the rights that homeschooling parents have. This is what I want to make sure that you understand, is that a state has a law, that they have laws in place. A school system have policies in place that you must abide by as a homeschooling parent. But then when you are considering dual enrollment, which is, or even preparing your child, and they're not going to be in college while they're homeschooled. You have finished homeschooling them for high school and then want them to go on to a four-year institution. There are policies that the different colleges and universities have that may not necessarily be state-based. What I mean by that is that you can have two schools, because this is my personal experience that I'm sharing with you now, is that my daughter actually started at one community college in our state, actually the one in our county, and we decided she actually wanted to go to another school in our state that I was teaching at, because the school that she had started at, she just wasn't feeling it, and personally, it was just a difficult. They had policies that just were not in our best interest when compared to the other school. Two schools, same state, different policies. What we'll find, if you were to just do a Google search now, think of any college that you're interested in. If you went to college, look at your alma mater, just check out what in their admission page, what their policy is for homeschool students, right? And you'll see that they may have a policy where the entire school for regular students, meaning the students who are coming directly from high school, or even as transfer students, may not be required to take the SAT. But you may see that homeschool students, however, may need to take the SAT or the ACT, whereas another college may not require that. So my point is that policy for institutions aren't necessarily the same or relevant to what you find as the laws that a state may have for homeschooling. When you're moving from preschool and 12th grade education to now what laws are when a child who has been homeschooled is now considering higher education, you have to be very particular in checking out what the policies are for each school. Even if you are used to something in your state, check out each school to see what their policies are, because they typically are not the same. So policies and law, can have a session all day about that. But as you are beginning your journey as a homeschool family of a preschool to 12th grade child, really check out what your state laws are. And this is more of what Maryland's policies are in terms of recognizing homeschool instruction. I know when we first started homeschooling, I would have my big binder where I had all of the work collected, and just a lot. Now we can basically get a portfolio review, do it electronically. I'm taking samples of things that she did, and it's call it a day. Very different process. They've become more digitized over the years, but check and see what that process is for your state, okay, and more specifically your county. There are some organizations called umbrella organizations that your state may have a listing of, which are organizations that can do a portfolio review if your state requires it. They can do that in lieu of you having to be reviewed by someone from your state. But you need to check what your policy is in order to be sure as to how that pertains to your homeschooling practice. In Maryland, there are dozens of organizations, mostly churches, that offer portfolio reviews for homeschooling families. So the family can go to this church, get a review, and they don't have, and the church will notify the county regarding whether or not the family is in compliance regarding their homeschooling practice. So again, check your county's website regarding homeschool. Be diligent in reading your county's website for the necessary requirements to legally homeschool. Be cognizant of deadlines for any paperwork or reviews necessary to maintain your family's homeschool status. And so as I come to the end, I really want you to write any questions that you have regarding this presentation in the comment section below, or in your workbook. If you still have questions regarding this, I would recommend in the comment section below, because we have many people now that have signed up for the teach-in, but we have speakers, we have sponsors, and we have people who can answer your questions if necessary. And I will also try to answer your question if I'm able to give you some guidance. This talk was intended to be one shared on the first day, because we know that a lot of you are coming with questions on how to get started on your journey. And this session was intended to help you start thinking about certain things. So if you have any questions, please post them below, and we will do our best to answer if possible. And hopefully if other people are seeing what your questions are, they can also offer some guidance. I hope this was helpful. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for being part of our teach-in. We're looking forward to you participating in our breakout sessions, which will be live on Friday, July 24th, where you have the opportunity to speak directly with some of our speakers and really engage in conversation around our 3 guiding questions of the teach-in. Thanks again. Have a great day.